Last segment here for the night on One-on-One. We thank Will Talent so much for the very talented headlines that he provided us here tonight. And Danny, we wanted to end the show in kind of a fun manner. And with the kickoff of the USFL Startup Football League today, we figured this would be, a fun way to end it. We've talked about being commissioners, but just the USFL to go over their league changes before we go over ours. What is different from them from the NFL? There's a 3-point conversion from the 10-yard line in addition to the 2-point and the extra point. The access that they have with drones and cameras and everyone's mic'd up is something they offer over everyone else. Their overtime rules, it's a 2-point conversion shootout. Not really the college sense, more points, honestly, and the college after the third overtime. Pretty similar to that. The kicks are from the 25-yard line to make them very receivable, so we'll see a lot of action on the kickoffs. So those are the big changes in the USFL. We'll see if it works. The XFL was my league. I put everything into it. I was a season
ticket holder, ladies and gentlemen. Ryan Gregor, season ticket holder.
The XFL Guardians, as some of you may know, and the pandemic obviously cut that league short. We'll see what happens next spring when The Rock revives it. But this is the league we have right now. And so we did want to end it with what we would do if we were in the place. Let's say we have all the money, all the access to make a football league we think is better than the NFL. What changes would we make to the sport of football? Danny, I'll start with you. What would you be looking to change?
So I think the most obvious and the thing that's going to make the most people happy is to change the overtime rules. The overtime rules in the NFL suck. I would go back to the college football rules from a few years ago. Each team starts on the opponent's 25-yard line, and you got to get a touchdown. For the first 2 periods, you can go for the point after touchdown and kick it for 1. Every period after that, you got to go for 2. I mean, we could be seeing some 90 to 85-point games, and that would just be an electric atmosphere for the game of football.
So take the over in your football league.
Yes, overs.
And that's something, in the real sense, in the NFL, we did see a final change. We've seen in the last 10 years, it changed from just a score in overtime, which is absurd. If you could just win it on a 50-yard field goal, you get 20 yards to win the game. Absurd. And then it went to the touchdown, and now the latest change, and with the Bills-Chiefs game probably sparking that, is just a playoff change, which is a step in the right direction again, how you do need to stop and score in the playoffs. Both teams get a chance with the football. So that I agree with, and your league would be a lot of points in that sense. So I think that's an interesting aspect. One of the things that I would do in a sense of, I've looked at the numbers and stuff, it's getting rid of the onside kick. I believe we saw the XFL do this, and you could make the case to even get rid of, you make every single, kickoff opportunity, and one kickoff's the most dangerous play in football in terms of head injuries. So you have the safety on your side. You get rid of the onside kick, which 9% of the time is when the other team recovers it. So not crazy probabilities here. And my alternative here is make it a 4th and 15. So the probability on this is it's 13%. So the people that argue, well, it's giving teams a ton of chances. Well, the 4% difference isn't a lot. But then there's the fun factor of you're down 2 scores, you score a touchdown. Well, now you have a 4th and 15 to try to just keep a possession alive. You can respot the ball after that. All that aspect, I think, from a perspective of watching from the consumer, it makes the game more fun. It makes it safer as well. And then, well, what do you do when you're not trying to go for it? You can just punt it. A 4th and 15 punt sounds good to me. Fine field position. You get rid of the kickoff, which is dangerous. You make it more interesting. You increase the probability a bit for comebacks and all that sorts of things, but you don't change it too much to where teams could be getting blown out and suddenly, before the other team touches the ball during the game, because 4th and 15 is still really hard to get, Danny. And so this has been something I've been on for years. I didn't come up with this model. It's been proposed, I think, in circles around the NFL. It hasn't gotten the maybe support that I believe it should have been, but I think this is a way that the NFL could better their sport.
I would eliminate kickoff as a whole.
Okay.
On mine. I like your idea, I think, a little bit better than mine. However, you brought it up. The most injuries and most head injuries specifically happen on the kickoff. So I completely agree with you. And the 4th and 15 is a very interesting idea. I hadn't thought of that or even heard of that until you just brought it up. But I think that's very interesting. And if it increases the chances of that happening, that would be pretty cool. But so with mine eliminating the kickoff, I would just, each team starts on the 20-yard line after a point is scored, and tough luck if if you need the points back. But I really like that idea. Another one that I think is in the USFL that I'm going to take a little bit of a next step is the forward pass rule. The USFL, you can do 2 forward passes as long as the ball is behind the line of scrimmage. And I would even take that to an extreme and say you can have as many forward passes as you want as long as they take place behind the line of scrimmage. I think that would be very interesting. You could see some electric trick plays. You know, I'm a fan of the 49ers.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Kyle Shanahan drawing up a 3 forward pass play? I mean, it could be very interesting. I think my league, you know, if you've listened to any podcasts I'm on, you hear me talk about my love for defense. However, what gets views is offense. Electric offense, high-powered offense, get these guys going. And I think you could get some really, really fun trick plays that would make it very interesting for the game.
I'll tell you what, one of the quarterbacks we didn't bring up last segment that is maybe looking for a new home is Jimmy Garoppolo. If this rule is in place, I have a feeling with Kyle Shanahan's unique brain, he could be staying a 49er, seeing all sorts of trick plays there. We've seen, I don't know if it's in the USFL, but I know for a fact it was in the XFL and it works. And in terms of highlights and trending and social media, it is something that every startup league should look to because that's how you're going to get eyeballs in the beginning. So I think that's a really interesting concept. Another one that I have in terms of a scheduling perspective, and maybe if they make me the commissioner of the NFL, I have the power to do this. This is already assuming that my league is successful. They do this the opening week of the NFL, and I don't understand, because I have a great time watching it, why they don't continue. And with COVID, we got a few instances where this was the case. It's the Monday Night Football doubleheader. Give me a game at 6. Give me a game at 8:30. Give me a Monday. Take over my entire Monday. You already take my Sunday. You can take half of my Monday as well. The ratings are always great when they do this. It appeases some of the East Coast people who always complain they have to stay up so late for Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, whatever it may be. This would, well, you get a game before then. You can choose to stay up till halftime of the second game. And then, so that's good for the East Coast people. And then the West Coast people, if they complain, I have work, well, you're still going to get back in time and watch a regular Monday night game. I think you can stagger the schedule enough to where it works 100%. So it's something where if my league's already popular like the NFL, I would be very for a Monday Night Football doubleheader.
I love that idea. As someone that's a native of the West Coast, that would be a little tough for the 3 o'clock game because that would be at 3 and then 5:30.
So you're the West Coast guy, so you can work the logistics a little more than me.
So I would say maybe start a game at 6:30 and then 9 o'clock. That makes a little more sense. Get people home by 6 o'clock. Everyone has a chance to maybe get some dinner and stuff like that. But I like that idea. That's a good idea. Double headers and maybe a Thursday night double header. You know, maybe for your idea, once a week. It's a Monday night doubleheader, then the next week it's a Thursday night, and just back and forth. I think that would be pretty interesting. My next idea, the NFL, I'm not sure if they're adopting this. I've heard talks of it, but more alternate jerseys. I think everyone loves to talk about jerseys. With the MLB City Connects, they get a lot of talks about it. And the big thing in the NFL is you can only have one helmet per season. I think they made a rule potentially this year, I can't remember off the top of my head, that says you can use a second helmet. But I would love to see these teams get creative with their jersey ideas. You know, you got teams that are only going to go with the classic looks. The Niners are going to remain pretty classic. The Packers are going to remain pretty classic. But these new franchises, like the Houston Texans, they can make some really cool looking stuff. I would love to see just teams get more creative with the uniforms they're wearing.
I think the Color Rush uniforms set the league back in that sense because that product didn't work out. You forced it in Thursday night. I'm watching ugly color schemes between the Titans and Jags on Thursday Night Football. It just seems so forced. Then they change it to you wear it once a season whenever you want. So that was fine, but I'm a big proponent in switching up jerseys. The Jets just did so a few years ago. I think any team, not to harp on the Jets, that doesn't have a blue blood, historic history, they should look into doing that. Switch up Texans. You're a losing franchise that's never been to a Super Bowl. Switch up the jerseys. I don't think it can hurt in that sense. So I'm a fan of that.
One real quick thing to add to that is, obviously, if you know me, I'm a huge Notre Dame football fan. The Shamrock Series, they get a new jersey every single year. I would love to see these franchises potentially, they have one new alternate every single year. They debut a new jersey.
And just, to wrap up here, a few more things that get talked about. Sometimes we saw the NFL adopt this in 1 year. It was challenging pass interference. There's also talk about moving to the college game where pass interference becomes just a 25-yard penalty spot instead of spot of the foul, which drastically changes NFL games, as we know. And the other one that I want to float out to you is the 1 foot in bounds that we see in college. And I'm probably against that because I think you need some separation between college.
I'm against it as well.
And the pros. But what do you think about the the penalty and all that sorts of stuff?
It's hard because we saw it in the NFL where the challenging pass interference didn't really make that big of a difference. It would be interesting to see what they could do with it. If you could get it right, I'm all for it because there has been instances where it's just a blown call and they didn't call it or they did call it and it shouldn't have been. So if they can do it right, I'm all for that. And I agree with you. 2 feet in bounds, separate yourself from the college game just a little bit. They're professionals. They should be able to get 2 feet in bounds.
Now, the last thing I want to ask you on, take it full circle, back to the USFL. We've seen the AAF fail. We've seen the XFL for now fail. Will this, Danny, be the league that breaks through? Will this finally be the spring football league that there's a market for, but for whatever reason, funding, backing, all sorts of things hasn't really developed and prospered?
No. I don't think there's any league that's ever going to compete with the NFL. They're just too big of a corporation, and they figured it out, and people look forward to the NFL. I think if there's football year-round, it's going to take away from both leagues. It's interesting to see these leagues start up, and I enjoy watching them when they happen because one happens like once every 4 years or so. It's almost like the Olympics. It's the XFL's turn, it's the USFL, it's the AFL, but I don't see any league competing with the NFL.
And I agree. And I was big on the AAF and I was big on the XFL, but I just don't think this is the league.